Welcome back to Advanced Sci-Fi Civilisations Too Stupid to Really Exist. Please hit that subscribe and notification button and check out the Media Zealot Patreon page if you'd like to vote on who's up next. This time it's the Necromongers from the Chronicles of Riddick. In Pitch Black, we rooted for a criminal with a severe cataract problem, who surprisingly wasn't convicted for being a creepy Night Stalker, as he took on a planetary hive of counterfeit xenomorphs and a suicidal lawman. Then inexplicably, the Chronicles of Riddick took us into full-blown space opera territory for half a movie, before the third installment threw Riddick back among the predators where he belongs.
It's an animal thing.
We'll be focusing on the bad guys from the awkward middle child of the franchise, the Necromongers, the ultimate Bible bashers, a nomadic civilization of militarized space zealots, followers of Necroism, a religion that regards life as antagonistic to the natural state of the universe.
In this verse, life is antagonistic to the natural state.
So naturally, they took that as a sign to go around acting like complete assholes. And they apparently see nothing ironic about this at all. Necromonger Heaven is a place called the Underverse.
A verse where life is welcomed. A ravishing, ever new place called Underverse.
And I know what you're thinking, that sounds a lot like hell. But it's totally not, guys. The Lord Marshal said as much. He's been there, or at least close to it, and he came back with some nifty powers to boot. The Underverse, or at least the entrance to it, is said to physically exist in this universe. But at the same time, it's meant to be the place where Necromongers go when they die. Like a previous Lord Marshal, Baylock, who died and had his body sent into the Underverse. Wait, so you actually have to send the bodies there now? Are the grunts going to receive this treatment? Obviously, there's something real about this Underverse place, but let's be honest, these guys know as much about it as we do. My money's on it being a Star Trek-esque predatory space anomaly, which has duped these gullible fools into sending it a regular supply of the tastiest food in the galaxy. But philosophical discussions aside, there's some far more tangible problems we can knock the Necromongers for. Point 1. The Necromongers' nihilistic religion and invasion methodology invites their own destruction. Way back when, the Necromongers started out as a quasi-religious group of isolationists who merely sought to distance themselves from what they saw as the corruption of human civilization. Kovu, the original Necromonger Lord Marshal, was the one who invented the founding principles of Necroism, the idea that life in this universe is a mistake, only corrected by dying and going to the Underverse. He didn't seem to have any evidence for these claims, other than he looked into the Underverse and just somehow ascertained all of that, and no one except the Lord Marshal can gaze upon it. How convenient. So obviously this was a terrible start to the newly developing Necromonger Empire. If life in the universe is an abomination, then the logical conclusion is to cease breeding and kill yourself immediately. Without any amendments, this idea would have seen the Necromonger Empire cease to exist within one generation. Kovu then said thanks for everything and took off to the Underverse to, I don't know, die or something. Thankfully, his successor, Ultivum, did a little better. Under his watch, the ideological flaws of their religion were debated, and later he set in motion a plan to build a great armada. He then claimed it was his due time to go to the Underverse and offed himself, and thus was born the notion that there is a right time to die, avoiding the inevitable stream of ritual suicides that may have followed. This religion doomed itself to fail with its foundational dogma, and only endures by being propped up by a bunch of tacked on revisions. So not realistic.
What in the bowels of Christ are you talking about?
Lord Marshal Nephimel then launched the Necromongers into space on a campaign to convert people, and it somewhat worked for a while, but predictably losses due to infighting and natural attrition began to outpace conversions, eventually causing a power struggle which saw Baylock the Brutal take the helm. He then slapped on the latest ideological band-aid by transforming the Necromongers into aggressive conquerors.
You believe that everyone in the galaxy should be like you.
Nowadays, they traverse the galaxy, forcibly converting and enlisting every human civilization they encounter, and killing all who dare to resist, like a crazed horde of Necromongers. But to be fair, this final evolution of their civilization is literally the only way they can endure for any meaningful length of time. They're still circling the drain, but at least they've slowed the pace a bit. The Necromongers believe that there are many verses and each one has its own god. Yet despite this, they only seem to recognize human life in our tiny corner of this universe as deserving of eradication. For such a misanthropic empire, they're still obsessed with placing humans at the center of all universes.
I've had to endure the egocentric nature of humanity.
Sure, there doesn't seem to be any bona fide intelligent aliens in this neck of the woods, but they're ignoring any potential life that probably exists in other parts of our universe, not to mention the other universes. There also seems to be plenty of alien animal life on random planets. Are they going to be thorough and take them out too? This confused quest is an exercise in futility. It's not like they have all the Infinity Stones. We enter the fray with Lord Marshal Xylor on a campaign to conquer Helion Prime, and their invasion strategy is about as subtle as you'd expect, warning their enemies of their arrival via a highly visible light show.
Their method has the added advantage of appearing innocent, at least in the beginning.
They then overwhelm any defenses with vast numbers of aircraft, before slamming down onto the surface. After the dirty work is done, the Lord Marshal stops cowering in Necropolis, and we learn that their ships are apparently designed entirely around this pointless display of power. These grunts are technically converts, but just how many are true believers remains in doubt, as we see people are forced to choose between conversion or death. So I'd imagine most aren't exactly willing soldiers. At best, they may have a wafer-thin belief in necroism, more likely they're just trying to survive.
They seem a bit skittish.
But worst of all, despite having plenty of gravity guns, these guys are coming at Riddick one at a time with knives and sending in melee troops to take on the local firearm-wielding militia, which ends about as well as you'd expect.
Maybe we should think about upping our game here a little bit.
The Necromongers apparently believe using melee weapons is more honorable, because invading peaceful planets and forcefully converting or killing everyone is completely honorable, right? I'm feeling better about this whole genocide thing. They may have blown away most of our forces with gravity weapons, but at least that berserker unit was mopping up our remaining forces and murdering innocent civilians with poleaxes. These guys aren't so bad.
They seem to lack any moral center.
What in the underverse are these psychos trying to prove, and who are they trying to prove it to? Everybody is dead. The compensation for this poor choice in field weaponry is to finish with this poor area of effect weapon which relies on your enemies being completely surrounded. And the poor battlefield choices don't end there.
What's the bad news? You close the local whorehouse?
This Necromonger elite is walking around with a large dagger jammed in his back. These Necros are supposedly more resistant to pain, but they can bleed out as well as anyone. So it's still a bad idea to have this dagger poking around at a convenient height while in combat. You've just given an unarmed opponent access to weaponry. And they couldn't just have a simple scanning device. No, they had to go all hard out and have a dedicated Lenser soldier freak, essentially turning their sensory technology into a massive walking weakness that probably didn't need to exist. Somebody put that thing out of its misery.
Sensors.
The Necromonger's strategy relies on crushing their opponents with vast numbers of troops and bombarding them with somewhat impressive technology. But even when victorious, their overall recruitment strategy must be a logistical nightmare. Say a planet does decide to join up rather than be obliterated. What do the Necromongers do then? Sit there for decades building new ships to house all these people? It's going to take some serious effort to get going again.
Since we arrived, you have spent as much time engaged in idle conversation as you have making repairs.
I reckon all of these guys are closet doubters. They're just content to waste time sitting there not going to Underverse.
Just do it.
Either that, or they're wiping out willing converts to expedite the whole process. And they better hope Underverse is what they think it is, because these idiots are destroying habitable worlds in their wake, for perhaps the dumbest reasoning we've encountered yet.
This verse that must be cleansed of life, so that Underverse can populate and prosper.
But there is one man who can potentially put an end to this mess, from a primal race prophesized to kill Lord Marshal Xylor, and unsurprisingly his management of this threat practically guarantees this prophecy will come to pass. Point 2. The Lord Marshal's management of the Furian threat creates ideal conditions for the prophecy to eventuate. Long ago, when Xylor was just a young, ambitious Necromonger warrior, he received a prophecy that said a male Furian would be his downfall, and rather than brushing this off as superstitious nonsense, he bought into it big time, invading Furia and slaughtering almost everyone, apparently even strangling babies using their own umbilical cords. That seems a bit excessive. This guy makes Darth Annie look tame. Was all of this even necessary? Just bomb the Furians or something, or just don't go there at all. If I believed in this prophecy, I'd see invading Furia as the absolute best chance of seeing it fulfilled. He's lucky Baby Riddick didn't flip the script and choke him out. But as it happens, it still didn't work out that well. Despite being a fully grown man, Xylor failed to kill infant Riddick. He may be tough as nails and possibly an alpha male Furian, but no matter how jacked this baby is, it's still defenseless. Maybe. Xylor's actions on Furia didn't succeed in killing the entire Furian race, but what it did accomplish was to give a ridiculous amount of credence to the prophecy. It's legitimized the idea in the minds of his enemies. He's exalted the Furians as saviors to be sought out, and risks diminishing any godlike status he may obtain in the future. So after brutally murdering a whole planet's worth of babies, Xylor then takes a problematic turn in logic when he seems to incorporate at least one, if not more, Furian males into the Necromonger forces. It's bad enough that this army is already full of forced converts. Now there might be some dudes lurking around who could fulfill this prophecy. Notably this guy, the Purifier, the most unconvincing preacher I think I've ever heard.
It was hard for me to accept too when I first heard these words. But I changed. I let them take away my pain.
He seems openly sympathetic to the plight of the unbelievers, and he's hanging around near the Lord Marshal on a regular basis. Admittedly, this guy doesn't seem like much of a physical threat, but he's still in a powerful position, and who knows how these zany prophecies will play out. Maybe he'll trip over his own feet and impale the Lord Marshal through the eye with his pointy hat. Enter fully grown Riddick. He makes short work of one of the Necromonger's greatest warriors, and grandstands his rebellious streak right in front of the Lord Marshal. So I guess we'll just let him right into the heart of Necropolis unrestrained then. That doesn't seem reckless.
I might have gone a different way.
The Purifier then predictably betrays the Lord Marshal and assists Riddick the moment he hears the word Furian, facilitating his escape. You should probably investigate who switched off that stasis field. Or don't.
Find him! Whatever it takes, find him!
Xylor also picked up another rebel along the way, Arian, an elemental, a dangerous person to have hanging around, since she brings some concerning security issues into play. Arian knows of the Furian prophecy and Xylor's actions on Furia, information which could severely erode his leadership, not to mention highlight any lurking Furians as potential allies. The Necromonger upper classes are a backstabbing, conniving bunch. Varco and his social climber wife are already scheming to oust the Lord Marshal, who in turn seems to have his suspicions about Varco's loyalty. It would probably be best to make sure access to Arian is severely restricted.
A young warrior once consulted a seer. He was told a child would be born on the planet Furia, a male child.
So after Riddick slips away, the logical next step for Xylor is to send out a commander whose loyalty is in doubt, to find a powerful Furian enemy who is very likely to be the one spoken about in the prophecy. Another winning strategy. Maybe they'll team up? I know, we'll send that other Furian guy, the Purifier, to make sure that doesn't happen. He seems totally loyal.
Don't you ever have doubts?
But luckily for the Lord Marshal, it doesn't end up as badly as it could have been, though it's still not that great. Varko fails to stop Riddick, and the Purifier grows a conscience, encouraging Riddick to go back and take the fight to Xylor. The Lord Marshal then takes Varko completely on his word that Riddick is dead. Even the Purifier was smart enough to recognize that Varko would most probably lie to cover his ass.
Varko will most likely report you as dead.
But Xylor seems to have no suspicions at all. He even promotes him for his good work. Maybe ask some of the other men who survived? So thanks to some woeful security and a rushed disembarkment courtesy of the Lord Marshal, Riddick weasels his way back into Necropolis for an assassination attempt. Xylor succeeds in thwarting it, but then he makes his most foolish error yet, after living in fear of Furians for half his life. And after putting his men between himself and Riddick for most of the movie, all of a sudden the Lord Marshal wants to do the honorable thing and take him on one-on-one. And this Riddick dude, like Xylor himself, has a power level over 9,000.
I think I shit myself.
It's a hell of a risk, prophecy or not. I mean, this guy's name is 2 letters off being Richard Dick. His full name is Richard B. Riddick. There's a whole nother dick to play around with there. Look, the point is, you take this guy on, you're gonna get screwed. An almost inevitable outcome when you consider there are other people around here who will probably be willing to assist Richard Dick. We've got Kira, Riddick's Stockholm Syndrome afflicted girlfriend / adopted sister / son? She's been playing the good Necromonger convert for all of 5 minutes, and already she seems to have total freedom. Xylor should be well aware by now the conversion process alone does not guarantee loyalty. Just ask Varko, another rebel hanging around. And some idiot has even let Arian out of her cage for a ringside seat. So predictably, with help from what is basically a Necromonger rebel cell present in the room, Riddick manages to finally fulfill the prophecy, killing the Lord Marshal with that stupid knife he pulled from that Necromonger's back. Now able to seize the throne under the very same principle that saw Xylor deliver the knife back to Riddick in the first place. Point 3. The Necromonger's commitment to an archaic doctrine encourages disloyalty and betrayal.
You can keep what you kill.
Yep, that's it. You keep what you kill. An obscure musing of the original Lord Marshal Kovu, which wasn't a central tenet of Necroism until Balok the Brutal used it to justify seizing power after he murdered Lord Marshal Nephimil. During that time, it was kind of understandable. The Empire was in a serious state of decline. But now that it's served its purpose, this really isn't a rule you want to have sticking around. You keep what you kill, might makes right, rule of the strong, or in political terms what is known as a craterocracy, is an antiquated ideology that would be more understandable during the Bronze Age or a post-apocalyptic Kevin Costner epic.
Any clansman may challenge for leadership of the clan.
Not a system of rule that an advanced spacefaring civilization should want anything to do with, that's for sure. Okay, admittedly, it's a pretty bad idea no matter the setting. This dangerous idea that power can be transferred legitimately through violence or a coup exalts strength and ruthlessness over any other traits, which just isn't a great way to ensure sound leadership, and it does nothing for the modern Lord Marshals except invite assassination attempts and rebellions.
He may not be guarding as carefully against an individual infiltrating the Imperial Hall.
Now you literally only have to kill one person to take over the civilization entirely. immediately.
Damn, I love a good smash and grab.
It's the very ideology that encouraged Varko's wife to develop her forked tongue, and it gives a path to salvation for the Necromongers' enemies. Combine this belief with another obscure piece of scripture which states that a Lord Marshal who lives in fear is unfit to lead. Throw in a few rumors about the Lord Marshal fearing the Furians, and boom, you're practically obliged to kill Lord Marshal Xylor for the sake of the Empire.
If he has fear, he has weakness. If he has weakness, Varko,
He is unworthy of lordship.
Despite the danger this doctrine could cause him, Xylor doesn't suppress it, retire it, or even shy away from it. In fact, he reps it hard, telling dangerous potential enemies all about it.
In our faith, you keep what you kill.
Which is even stranger when you consider that Xylor appears to have murdered his predecessor without invoking the keep what you kill rule himself. The unlikely official story says that Xylor found his predecessor dead by ritualistic suicide, with a super convenient suicide note naming him as the next Lord Marshal.
What's that?
The new Lord Marshal then purged anyone who claimed otherwise. Why did he even bother covering this shit up? He could have just done it openly. It's clearly established the keep what you kill rule applies to the lordship itself. This man is deeply confused.
Very skittish.
So inevitably, this troublesome ideology results in a non-believer ascending to the throne. It's not like the death of Xylor was any great loss, but this is still a pretty dire outcome for a malevolent race like the Necromongers, because secretly this rigid dick guy is a massive softie.
It's been a long time since I smelled beautiful.
He apparently has no intention of observing the obligatory pilgrimage to the threshold of Underverse. Not to mention, he has no interest in conquering planets for the Necromonger cause. They're back to a state of stagnation that would eventually be their downfall.
All back of the bus and shit.
Things are in such dire straits, even the local concubines are willing to give this assassination thing a crack.
Dust my dick when you get the chance.
So with a depressed, reluctant leader at the helm, Varko does what all good Necromonger commanders do and makes up some religious BS to fix the problem.
Transcendence.
Striking a dodgy deal with Riddick, he dumps him on a hostile world. Admittedly, a smarter prospect than Xylor, with the added bonus of having a conniving wife to help protect him. Lord Marshal Varko recommits to Necroism by taking off on a pilgrimage to the Underverse. Things look almost rosy, assuming this place won't kill them all immediately. But even if they survived, the Necromongers, like their brief appearance in the franchise itself, will undoubtedly end up nothing more than a temporary blip on the universe's radar. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for a ticket to Underverse and accept the latest revision to scripture by hitting that like button.